September is finally here, and today we're going to be looking at some of the biggest movers in the Pokemon card single market. There have been some crazy movements with cards from the Scarlet and Violet era over the past few months, and today we're going to be looking at the entire series. We won't be focusing on one or two sets, the entire series. And the majority of the cards that we'll be looking at are on an upwards trend. However, there will be a few cards that have taken a bit of a tumble. Let's get started. So the first one over here is this beautiful Groudon. I actually love this card so much, and I don't even have it actually. I still don't have it. I haven't pulled it, nor have I bought it. And I missed my opportunity when it was about $20. Now it's much more expensive. We'll look at that in a moment here, but just looking at the artwork here, it's actually really well done. It looks like, you know, the volcano's in the background, and it looks like he's going towards the water, about to fight maybe Kyogre or something like that. Again, that's just what it looks like he's about to do. Anyways, it's a beautiful card, and I think it's one of my favorites so far from the Scarlet and Violet era. Just looking at the prices here though on it, it has gone down about 19.4, so call it 20% over the past 3 months. We were at $65 and now we're sitting around 51. So it has taken a bit of a tumble here, 19% over the last 3 months or so. It's a pretty heavy dip. I think this is a good opportunity to potentially grab this card. It may go down a little bit further, but if you really want it, 50 bucks is not too bad for this illustration rare. So Groudon is the first one that's taking a tumble. And I did decide to start off with one that was taking a bit of a hit because it's potentially an opportunity to buy this card, of course. The next one here is Arbok from Temporal Forces. And this is a beautiful artwork, and it's actually not an expensive card at all. It's still going only for $7. However, it has had about a 20% increase as well over the past 3 months. So we were around $5 in June here for this one, and now we're at about $7, giving it a 21% increase, which is a very strong increase. Again, these cards are not very expensive, so whether you were to pick it up for $3 or $7 or $8 or whatever it is, it's still relatively affordable. But what I am seeing here is that, as I mentioned earlier, the illustration rares from the Scarlet and Violet era are starting to, again, make their way upwards. Even though they're a few dollars, they're still making that upward movement here. And just to look at this card here one more time, it's actually really well done. I love the moon in the background, and he's just kind of dipping towards the bird over there. It's a beautiful card, and I think it's undervalued, to be honest with you. I think it should be worth more than that. But here's one now that has gained 20% over the last 3 months, and it's sitting at $7. The next one we're looking at here today is Eviltail, and this one is doing phenomenal. It's had a pretty big gain so far for the year. We're looking at about a 44% increase over the last 3 months. It's at $13 here, from about $8.77 up to $13.39. So again, it's a very affordable card, but 44% over the last 3 months. That's a pretty significant increase for this illustration rare. It's a nice card as well. It's not my favorite card in the entire lineup here, but it's still one that I would consider adding to my collection. Eviltail here, $13.39 and having a 44% increase. And we're seeing a lot of Paradox Rift cards starting to do really well here. And Paradox Rift is actually a very affordable booster box. You can still pick it up for around that $100 US or 140-ish Canadian dollars. So it is something to consider, and I know I made a video earlier about which booster boxes you potentially want to invest in, and this is one of them. This is one that you may want to consider because it's below market value for the booster box. As we all know, booster boxes in general, no matter what set or series they are, they tend to do well in the long run. So Paradox Rift, good one to get, and Eviltail is doing fantastic so far. Here's another one that is having a bit of a tip. Tyranitar from Paldea Evolved. This one is actually a really cool card, and I was lucky enough to pull this one randomly. I think I just bought a pack when I was at Walmart, and I ripped it and I was like, oh my god, I got Tyranitar. That's pretty cool. I wouldn't say Tyranitar is my favorite, but I think it makes my top 10 because I like the artwork with it, with the whole birds just flying around there and just coming out of the rocks. It's kind of like Groudon, but you know, a little bit different concept here. It's a really nice card, and again, Paldea Evolved is of course doing really well. A lot of the cards in that set are making their way up, but this one on the other hand is actually doing the opposite. And for the last 3 months, it was a $43 card, and now we're at $32. We're down about 26%. So it looks like there's been a bit of a shift here. So some of the other illustration rares in the set now are kind of making their way up, and some of the ones that were a little bit too pricey, such as this Tyranitar, has gone down in price, and this gives you an opportunity to actually buy this card now. Again, $32, it's not bad for a card that was over $40 just a few months back. and a card from Paldea Evolve. Paldea Evolve tends to be one of the better sets from the Scarlet and Violet era. This is one that I would definitely consider picking up if you don't have it right now. It is a reasonable price. Next up is Plusle, another card from Paradox Rift. As I mentioned earlier, Paradox Rift cards are starting to really pick up the pace here. This one is actually doing fantastic. And when I'm talking about fantastic, I'm talking about 51% over the last 3 months. We were talking about this card was around $8 and now we're all the way up to $13.29. Plusle is doing actually much better than Mittens. We're not going to look at Mitten today because we don't want to go through every single card here today, but just to focus back on this one here, 51%, a Paradox Rift card. It's really good. And again, it goes back to what I was saying. Some of these cards from Paradox Rift are really starting to take off here. It just makes you wonder a little bit, should we be buying maybe a little bit more Paradox Rift at this point, as it is still relatively affordable, as I mentioned. The next one we're looking at here is Snorlax from the Pokemon Center ETB. And this is the one specifically with the Pokemon Center stamp. And this one is doing amazing. If we look down here, we're at 26% gain over the last 3 months. And we're talking about a card that was around $44, which is pretty expensive already for just a promo card, and now we're up to $56. These promo cards are doing really well, and again, specifically the ones that have the Pokemon Center stamp. We're not going to look at every single one of the promo cards today. Of course, we've got Charmander from the Pokemon Center as well, but generally speaking, if the card has the Pokemon Center stamp on it, it tends to do much better, and we can tell you here that $56, I think this card is only like $5 for just the non-Pokemon Center stamp one, but $56 is pretty up there, and I wouldn't want to know what a PSA 10 would look like. Again, you can get this card if you just want the artwork for it from a regular ETB or pick it up for a few dollars. But if you want the one with the Pokemon Center stamp, you got to pay the big bucks, and that one is the one that's doing really well right now, 26% over the last 3 months. So we just finished looking at a few cards that are in the low to mid range. Now we're going to look at some of the heavier hitters, starting with the Charizard EX from Pokemon 151. This one is doing actually really well over the last 3 months, surprisingly, as there was a lot of talk about the reprints and restocks and all that fun stuff, but still doing really well. So $104 just a few months back, and now we're all the way up to $129, $130. That's a 24.4% increase over the last 3 months for this Charizard. And again, it's Charizard at the end of the day, and it's always going to do relatively well in comparison to other Pokemon cards in their sets, even the weaker sets. For example, looking at Obsidian Flames, even though those ones go for around, let's say, $40 or $50 for a Charizard, it's still the most expensive card. And in this case, the mid-tier cards tend to be in that $50 to $60. Charizard naturally will be more expensive. So Charizard EX from the 151 collection is doing really well. I'll be very cautious with this one, of course, because we don't know what's going to happen here. It's probably inevitable at this point that we're going to have some sort of a restock or reprint, and that's probably going to affect the price of this a little bit. So you may want to hold off on buying this card specifically just for a little bit longer to see what happens. Charizard EX doing really well. And since we're on the Charizard topic, we might as well look at Charizard EX from Paldean Fates. Personally, I like this Charizard much more than the 151. As you can see, I didn't really comment much on the 151 one. I've made my points about it. This Charizard is really cool. I love the colors. It's super vibrant, the black, purple, and red. A little bit of aqua blue there and whatnot. It's actually really nice. It's got like a crown. You know, he's like the King Zard, if you want to call it that. It's much nicer in my opinion. This one as well is doing really well over the last 3 months. We're looking at about 9% over the last 3 months, which is really good. So we're at about $100, $102 earlier in the year, 3 months ago, and now we're at $115, $116. So this one's making its way up as well. This is a really nice card, as I just said. It's one of my favorites so far from 2024. And I'm not super into collecting Charizard cards, but this one over here is a really nice one. And I mean, I'm not even saying I'm not super into it. I mean, everyone collects Charizard cards, but it's not my first choice of card to collect. This one here is definitely in my top 10 from the Scarlet and Violet era. And since we're on Paldean Fates, we will look at the Mew as well, Mew EX. I actually don't have this card. I pulled Charizard twice, but I haven't pulled Mew at all. It's really nice here. We've got the Digletts in the background. We've got a whole bunch of Pokemon there. I think they're all Dittos from my understanding. And Mew is just laughing it up. I'm just making that up, and it seems that that's the case here. This one has done really well. This one has gone up about 10% over the last 3 months. So we were around $80, $84 here, and now we're at $94, $95. We're touching that $100 mark here. It's getting close to that Charizard price, but at the end of the day, these are the two cards from Paldean Fates that are the heavy hitters. It was the Charizard and the Mew, and they're doing what they were meant to do. Stay up there in the close to that 100 or just above the $100 range. And this is a card that, you know, it may actually do really well in the future as well. It's a Mew, it's a shiny Mew at the end of the day. I know it doesn't say shiny Mew, but it's blue. As the Paldean Fates set ages a little bit, it should do even better in the future. But I do want to be cautious here because there is going to be so many sets coming out, and we've got Surging Sparks this year still. We've got Stellar Crown that's coming out next week. It's a lot. We've got Team Rocket. We've got the Pokemon trainer cards that are coming out in 2025 as well. So I don't know what's going to happen with all of these other cards that have been out now for a little bit. They may be a little bit of a downward turn as people start to turn their attention to these newer cards. But Mew is Mew, and I think it will hold its value. It's a nice card at the end of the day, and $94 is not too bad for this one. And the last one we're looking at today is Eevee from Twilight Masquerade. Yes, I'm not going to look at Greninja because we know that card is just killing it around the $300 mark. We're going to look at Eevee because Eevee has actually also picked it up. It has gone about a 27% increase over the last 3 months. So this card was around $41, $42 and has gone all the way up to about $52. So it's really doing well in my opinion. And I think it's one that you want to consider picking up for your collections because it's one of the best cards that I've seen so far in the entire Scarlet and Violet era. You've got like 8 Eevees just hanging out here, everyone doing their own thing. It's really nice. It's a really cool card at the end of the day. And right now, $52. To be honest with you, I think this may crack that $100 at one point, not anytime soon. It's got a long way to go before that. It has had a bit of a decline as well. Actually got up to almost $70 here at the beginning or at the end of mid-July, I should say. It got up to about $70. So it has had a little bit of a decline here if we look at that. Anyways, this is a nice card. It's one that you want to consider investing in. The Eevee and Evolution line has been doing really well over the past few years, and I feel like this card will also be doing well. Anyways, folks, that's a quick look at some of the heavy movers over the last few months. We've seen some cards doing really well and some of them actually taking a bit of a decline. We've also seen some of the smaller sets doing really well and maybe giving you an idea of what we should be investing in for the future for some of these other cards. As we see cards from Paradox Rift, for example, are doing really well over the past few months. That may lean you towards starting to invest in some of the Paradox Rift booster boxes for the future. Anyways, that's just my opinion on that one. We'll take a look at some of these movers again in a month or so just to see what's going on with some of these cards. I wasn't able to touch on all of the cards today, of course, because there's so many of them to look at, but do leave a comment on if you see any other cards that are making some big movements and if we should be investing in them or not. Anyways, folks, if you like this content, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. My name's TRV, and we'll see you next time.